The second arc of Andor Season 2 is out, so let's not waste any time and just dive into these 3 new episodes. We're now on Coruscant in the year 3 BBY, 1 year after the death of Brasso and the escape from Mina Rao. Bix is still having nightmares about Dr. Gorst, but they're starting to intertwine with her own feelings of guilt. It sounds like she and Cassian were recently on a mission where they had to kill an Imperial soldier who saw their faces, and that's not sitting right with her. It's like she's starting to mentally equate her own actions with those of Gorst, wondering if she's any better than her torturer. After Cassian wakes up, she explains that sitting still and relaxing makes the nightmares worse. Like I did last week, I'm gonna just stick with their storyline, and in their next scene, they go shopping together. First, I want to point out how great the interior of the store is. I recall Tony Gilroy talking about how much work goes into creating a Star Wars series, and it's work that is sometimes nearly invisible. In most shows or movies, if someone goes shopping, they just film in a grocery store. But in Star Wars, if you enter a grocery store, you've got to create a ton of strange-looking food and put it all in packaging labeled with Aurebesh. It's something that can completely fly under the radar, and I think it's worth mentioning. But the point of the scene is to show how Cassian also struggles to sit still. So much of his life is spent running around on missions where he doesn't know who to trust, so the second he has to be a normal person, he just can't be one. He can't go shopping or talk with a grocer without thinking someone is out to get him. Back home, we see some friction in his relationship with Bix, because she doesn't agree that they had to kill that soldier she's feeling so guilty about. Something I love about Andor is that it takes a lot of the ideas of Star Wars to the next, more difficult, more complex level. Star Wars constantly explores when fighting and violence are necessary, when diplomacy will no longer work, and when we have to fight. And then Star Wars also explores how to fight without losing yourself by remembering what you're fighting for, saving what you love versus fighting what you hate. I think Andor is asking when to draw the line even on that path. I think Cassian is trying to save Bix, but did he have to kill this nameless soldier to keep her safe, or is he completely acting out of fear? I don't think we can say for sure. We don't know the details of the mission. All we do know is that Bix doesn't seem to think it was necessary, and that Cassian may have gone too far. Maybe it did have to be done, but off of a mission, Bix is struggling, and it reminds me of that great Faramir or Sam moment in the Lord of the Rings movies or books respectively, where they lament the deaths of their enemies, wondering what lies they had been fed to go to war, doubting that they were truly evil at heart. Bix gets to the core of Cassian's issues in their next scene, where he basically admits that he's afraid of losing her, which should set off alarm bells in every Star Wars fan. Fear of loss, it's bad, Cassian, be careful. He's trying to control what can't be controlled, especially in the midst of a war. He who seeks to control fate shall never find peace. Greed and fear of loss are the roots that lead to the tree of evil. Obviously, I'm not saying Cassian should do nothing to protect himself and Bix, but that's a slippery slope to give into that fear to the point where you will do anything and give up everything to avoid that pain. Like I said, this isn't a black and white discussion. This is a very Star Wars issue to explore, but it's much harder to arrive at the right answer, and I'm not even sure there is one. Next, we head over to Gorman, and we catch up with Sirill, who probably has my favorite storyline of this arc. He's been sent to the planet to worm his way into the Gorman resistance, and it's wild to see him this way. He's putting on an act for his mother, and it's all for the benefit of the people he knows are spying on him, but he's actually able to show a little spine when he speaks to her. He sounds confident when it's all part of being a super spy. But more than that, he's telling Edie she's watching too much Imperial News, excuse me. He's saying all the right things, defending the Gormans, and I know it's all an act, but even this early on, I was starting to wonder and even hope that this experience might lead him down a better path. For now, his plan is working, and the Gormans decide to meet with him. They approach him in the plaza and invite him to a meeting later, and I just have to shout out how awesome this set is. Like Ferrix or the Mothma estate, it's so big, it looks so good, and it makes this show feel big. I have to admit the volume is improving in its scope, and there were a lot of great locations in Skeleton Crew that felt large, but there's something about having a set like this Gorman Plaza that I love to see in Star Wars. Back at Sirill's home, he finds that the string he attached to his door was broken, meaning someone had been inside, and he seems so pleased. He is enjoying playing spy so much. I also wonder if he used this same trick to know when Edie had been snooping in his private box. He did tell her he had ways of knowing back in Season 1. He goes to report to Dedra, and he still seems giddy that people are watching him, following him, and breaking into his apartment. He also seems eager to get Dedra's approval now that he no longer craves his mother's. Sirill goes to the meeting, which is a public forum where the citizens of Palmo express their distaste for everything the Empire is doing to them. I get the sense that they don't know one of the city council members is the head of the Gorman Front. We also get a mention of a memorial to the Tarkin massacre, which is kind of amazing. The original Gorman massacre from Star Wars Legends went down exactly as Rylands and later the Bellhop describe. Tarkin landed his ship on hundreds of peaceful protesters, crushing them to death shortly after the rise of the Empire. I just assumed that all would have been changed for Andor because the Gorman massacre had been stated to be much later in Star Wars Rebels. Well, no, unfortunately that just means there were 2 Gorman massacres, and we haven't even seen one yet. But buckle up, because that's probably going to be in the next arc taking place in 2 BBY. Sirill is attempting to find an in with the Gorman Front, and I know he's having fun playing spy, but I just don't think there's a way he gets through hearing a story like that and getting close to these people and coming out the other side unaffected. Hopping over to Coruscant, Mothma struggles to drum up votes to shut down the PORD, the law that increased prison sentences, pointing out that the Empire seems to be inventing criminals rather than finding them. But nobody is willing to stand up to the Emperor, not even the Gorman senator who knows his people are being more severely punished. We continue to see how absolutely dysfunctional the Imperial Senate is now. It doesn't exist to actually get work done or serve the people of the Empire, it's just there as an illusion. In a later scene, Mon and Perrin share a speeder ride where they discuss how many senators are being sworn in and how many of them are throwing banquets to celebrate it. Perrin points out that Mon served for several years before hosting a dinner like that, but these newbies just can't wait to show off all at once. I think that's another sign that the Senate is changing and failing. It's a nothing organization that does nothing for its people, but it does allow those who serve on it to reward themselves and pretend they're doing some good. The Empire probably helps to keep them fat and happy and satisfied, specifically so they won't get any real work done. Like I said earlier, Star Wars often talks about knowing when it's the right time to fight and when diplomacy has failed. Mon Mothma is well on her way to that realization. So let's check up on someone who is the opposite of Mothma, willing to fight at the drop of a hat. Saw Gerrera is on Dakar, where the Resistance will one day make their base, as seen in The Force Awakens. Willman is there to help learn how to steal Rhydonium without dying. That was a type of highly volatile fuel that was seen in Star Wars Rebels and The Mandalorian. It's very dangerous. I love how absolutely crazy they make Saw and his partisans seem. They were intense in Rogue One, but this is already the most we've seen of them in Andor, and they are not a fun group, completely unhinged. And now Willman has to hang out with them and try to teach them how to steal fuel without exploding. Over at the ISB, undercover agent Young ingratiates himself with just about everyone by pointing out some problems in the Bureau, while also taking the heat off of some of his fellow agents. He impresses Major Partagaz and makes Legret and Hirt grateful. It's interesting that all he really did was speak up when he didn't have to. The ISB is a place where you don't stick your neck out for your peers, but Lonnie does it, and that one simple act creates a level of trust his fellow agents aren't used to experiencing. I was interested to see that Hirt, Dedra's former assistant, has replaced Blevin from Season 1, and has also taken over the Axis case, which does not sit well with Dedra. But Young heads down to meet with Luthen, and it sounds like they're meeting up a lot more frequently than they were in Season 1. But he tells Rael that Dedra is running Gorman, creating more mystery around the Empire's interest in the planet. That prompts Luthen to ask Cassian to head there alone to meet with the Gorman Front without Bix. Left alone and stuck in a house that's not a home, she starts taking some drugs. That's the end of the first episode of the arc, so let's just keep on going. We pick up right where we left off as Cassian visits a travel agency for a false identity. He has to go through a little script with the people there to make sure everyone is cool, and then off he goes with a Mission Impossible style recording to fill him in on who he will be pretending to be. It's rad. I love all this spy stuff. Luthen checks on Bix to offer her a job, but changes his mind when he sees she's taking drugs. She claims to only use them for sleep, but we also see her looking pretty rough watching Good Morning Coruscant, which I thought was fun to see, a Star Wars talk show that seems basically like a real-world talk show. Over on Gorman, we see Sirill continuing to play spy as well. He stages a big confrontation with the ISB where he gets to stand up to them and make a big fuss, once again all for the benefit of the people who are watching and listening to him. I love all this spy stuff too. The Gormans look into his history and see that he was fired in disgrace from Preox Morlana, and I love how this backstory makes him look even more like an ally, because a normal person would hate the Empire, but Sirill just wants to find his way back into their good graces. They quote-unquote convince him to give them the delivery schedule of construction vehicles that are supplying the armory in their city so they can confirm that it's an armory. Another victorious step taken, Sirill reports back to Dedra on Coruscant. He can only stay for an hour, and she has him followed, which seems like something he takes pleasure in, and so they turn out the lights. These two are a lot, but I do like watching them together. That's about when Cassian arrives on Gorman, and I cannot tell you how much I was hoping to see him run back into Sirill. That's a reunion I desperately want to happen. But for now, Cassian makes a new friend in the form of the Bellhop. We hear more details about the Tarkin massacre, and this is so wild to me. It's one thing to read about that version of the Gorman massacre in reference books or hear it mentioned in other stories, but to have a character who was there talk about the experience of living through it. Andor doesn't do a ton of references or Easter eggs or whatever you want to call them, but when it does so with strong purpose. Kinda like Cassian's short conversation with Nia in episode 1, I also just see in him a talent for connecting with people. He's not acting as his true self, but he is there to help build up the rebellion, and I think he's able to do that in a small way here by connecting with someone instead of distrusting them. It's strange to see him act this way on a mission, but when he's on a break, he can't even trust a shopkeeper. Or maybe the fact that Bix isn't with him allows him to be a little more carefree and put himself at risk, but not her. He changes his tune when he meets with Inza Rylans, the daughter of the head of the Gorman Front. That scene was great. It was shot well, and I just love conversations like this where characters slip back and forth between friendly chatter and hushed, tense whispers. Cassian is pretty cold through it all, but I think he's just trying to help the Gorman Front become something more capable that can endure and not be easily taken down. He chastises her for rushing and not being more careful, and basically for being too trusting, which is fair seeing as they've put their faith in Sirill Karn. The next day he meets with Caro and learns about the Imperial source, but not Sirill's name, and he warns them against trusting anything an Imperial says, but agrees to potentially help them attack a military transport. Back on Coruscant, Sirill gets to tell Partagaz all about the attack and even gets a good job from the Major in the ISB, which he claims is the greatest day of his life. The Empire plans to let the Gorman Front's heist succeed so they will continue to grow bolder, but Cassian is resistant to the idea. He discourages the Gormans from going through with it, which, knowing what we all know as the audience, might be the right call. But like I've been saying, Andor explores complex ideas without clear right answers. What should the Gormans do? I agree with Rylans that doing nothing does not seem like an option, but the audience also knows that doing anything is playing right into the Empire's hand. I think from Cassian's point of view, we're seeing that he's being a little more cautious than he should be. On Dakar, Willman trains one of Saw's partisans, Pluty, on the Rhydonium stealing device. Saw tells Pluty that when he feels ready to complete the task on his own, he will kill Willman. But Pluty asks Saw to tell him where they will be stealing the Rhydonium so he can focus on the right sequence for the device. But that seems to set off Saw's paranoia, so he kills Pluty instead, requiring Willman to perform the heist. And I honestly can't tell if Pluty actually was a traitor or not. Two Tubes claims there's proof, but he's just holding up something random. We don't get to see or hear the evidence. I could see all of this being in Saw's head, considering killing Willman, but then deciding he trusts Pluty less. So they go on their heist, and this scene was tense. Saw tells Willman a crazy story about being in a work camp on his homeworld Onderon, which absolutely could not have been helpful, but Willman gets it done, and Saw goes in and takes a big breath of the gas, and he calls it his sister and says it loves him, and that sounds crazy by itself, but if you know about his sister from the Clone Wars, it's even more chilling. Saw's sister Stela was the leader of their resistance group during the Clone Wars, but she died defending their planet. She was Saw's moral compass, and he never recovered from her loss. Saw even admits to being crazy, saying revolution is not for the sane, because he knows he'll be dead before the Empire is defeated. In the final episode of the arc, Luthen meets up with Cassian, who thinks it's best to stay out of Gorman. He thinks, like many storylines this season, that their actions will be too little too late. He's afraid that provoking the Empire will only bring death and destruction to the Gormans, but that's an outcome Luthen is prepared to live with. It's a planet in the Colonies region, just outside of the core worlds. They have wealth and status, and if the Empire smashes its boot down on a planet like that, people will take notice. More so than an Outer Rim planet like Ferrix, which is an unfortunate truth. People often don't take note of injustice until it's right in front of them. Since Cassian doesn't want to work with the Gorman front, Vel is sent in his place while he goes home to Bix. It's nice seeing them have a quiet, vulnerable moment together. Cassian never lets his guard down, but with Bix, they can be playful and flirty together. They get to experience trust and vulnerability. Until Luthen comes back up and Cassian starts to question everything about the man and his intentions. Between that and seeing Luthen's hopes for Gorman, I think some cracks are starting to form on this side of the rebellion. So Cassian confronts Luthen and basically realizes how much easier fighting in a revolution would be if he were alone and had nothing to lose or no one to worry about. That's certainly how Luthen sees things. Vel told us in the first arc that she never gets to hear from Cinta, and we expand on that in the scene later in this very episode. I think this shows a flaw in how Luthen operates. In the first arc, I talked about how the rebellion, when it's at its most idealistic, doesn't forget what it's fighting for. It saves what it loves, it doesn't simply destroy what it hates. Luthen's deep paranoia leads him to try to keep his operatives isolated because he thinks they'll be better weapons that way. But paradoxically, he also knows that the various rebel cells need to start working together. He tries to get Saw to work with Krieger, and we saw how detrimental this separation and distrust can be in the first 3 episodes of this season. The rebels need a leader like Mon Mothma. We know Luthen has to fade away and probably disappear at some point. I do think his work shaping the rebellion will be foundational, but when you look at him through the lens of Star Wars and what it says about how to fight, he is not destined to lead forever. I also think he knows that. He burns his life for a sunrise he knows he'll never see. Similar to Saw, I think he knows that his work will pay off after his time. Before he leaves, Cassian demands Luthen more actively help Bix, and over at the ISB, we see that opportunity present itself. Partagaz tells Young and Hirt that Dr. Gorst's torture methods are going to be expanded, and the Major's exasperation at Hirt telling him to calibrate his enthusiasm was delightful. I know Partagaz is an awful human being, but Anton Lesser plays him so well, I love every time that character is on screen. Anyway, Young uses his social leverage to give Hirt all the work so he can run off and tell Luthen what's going on. Back on Gorman, Vel and Cinta meet back up for the first time since maybe Ferrix? We don't know, but they actually seem to be on the same page now. Cinta explained she had an accident and had to recover, but that seems to have helped her put some things into perspective. I wonder if the accident occurred staging Tay Kolma's death. Maybe she crashed his speeder and was injured in the process. Whatever happened, she is now making her relationship with Vel more of a priority. Later, she apologizes and straight up admits what Luthen hints at with Cassian. They are worth more to him separately than together, which actually reminds me of the whole attachment discussion with the Jedi. The Jedi forbid attachments, which some people seem to take as don't form relationships or friendships or don't fall in love. What I think it really means is don't be like Anakin. Don't become so attached that your fear of loss takes over every other emotion you have. We see time and time again in Star Wars that characters are strengthened by their connections. We even see that with Anakin himself throughout the Clone Wars. In my opinion, attachments are fine as long as you keep everything in balance. Luthen wants his people to have less to live for, so they're willing to give more. Or maybe it helps him to treat those people like chess pieces when he sacrifices some of them. Meanwhile, I've been setting aside an entire plotline until now, but Clea learns that Skolden has found a fake in his art collection and will be re-examining every single one of his pieces. She learns that because of a bug planted in one of those pieces, meaning they will have to get it out before it's discovered. I like Luthen's complaints about having so many lines of information and struggling to keep up with it all, which is basically the same observation Agent Young made about the ISB arresting too many people. There's too much happening, and it's impossible to organize the chaos no matter which side you're on. Skolden throws a big art show, and on the night of the party they plan to remove the bug in plain sight. It's an awesome setup for a tense conclusion. Mothma also arrives after she watches a senator being sworn in, and seeing how angry she is during all of that is awesome. She is definitely reaching her boiling point. As she heads inside, she runs into Bail Organa, and yeah, it's time to talk about that recasting. Bail is now being played by Benjamin Bratt. Rumors of this have been swirling around the past couple weeks, and Tony Gilroy even hinted at not being able to get some of the actors back. But when I first watched these episodes, I had no idea. This absolutely took me by surprise. I hope we get to hear about all this because obviously Jimmy Smits is who I think of when I hear the name Bail. I have to assume this was a scheduling issue for Smits. I know he's reprising his role from Dexter, and his schedule probably just got shuffled around after the strikes. And honestly, no shade at all to Benjamin Bratt. I think he's great casting. It's a bummer that it's not Jimmy, and it's weird to see someone else in the role. But I think it would have been weirder if Bail Organa were completely absent for the birth of the rebellion. I think this one short scene is like ripping the band-aid off, telling fans, yes, there is a recast of a major character, let's confirm that and move on with the episode so when he appears more significantly, everyone will be prepared. I'm still a little bummed, but it's just one of those things. Productions are difficult, and sometimes the planets don't all align. But the rest of the episode is set up to cut between two major climaxes. Mothma, Luthen, Kleya, Krennic, and Young at the party, while Vel and Cinta are on their heist with the Gorman front, all being watched by Sirill and the ISB. Let's start with the party, because seeing Mothma and Krennic trading barbs and basically having a political debate was wonderful on its own, but between that and Kleya using Lonnie to remove the listening device, all of that was rad. And there are some fun pieces in the art collection, like a sphere that looks an awful lot like what a Death Star looks like when it's under construction, just a reminder of that ticking clock. But Luthen and Kleya are successful, and they walk away making jokes and laughing, and I think that's pretty interesting. Luthen wants his operatives to work alone, and yet he has this one person that he trusts completely. I think they care for each other. I don't think he would abandon her. He gives himself an okay to form an attachment, but does not trust the people who work for him to do the same. Meanwhile, on Gorman, everything goes exactly as it was supposed to, and nothing goes wrong. Just kidding, this is Andor, nothing goes right, and it's not even the Empire's fault. The heist is shot so well, the camera traveling down the tunnel and into the speeder with the case was awesome, but two things go wrong, and both are direct violations of Vel and Cinta's orders, which is another result of having a lack of trust between rebel cells. The Gore don't like these outsiders coming in, acting like they know best, but they do know best. They have way more experience in this kind of thing. But the orders are ignored, so Drina leaves her post to help an old woman get to safety, and Sam brings a blaster to the heist when he was told not to. First, I like that Drina's defiance of orders comes out of compassion for an innocent. I think that's part of the struggle of the Rebel Alliance, is that they actually care about people, at least when they're at their best. Someone like Saw or Luthen certainly would have allowed that woman to walk into danger. The Empire would too, because they don't care about anyone. But Drina cares. It's much harder to accomplish your goals when you aren't willing to steamroll innocent bystanders. But Sam, he just ignored what he was told, and then he gets into a fight with someone who is on his side. Lazine didn't seem to know about the Gorman front at the town hall. He wants to oppose the Empire, but he's not in the know, and he wanders into the heist. Sam escalates things, they tussle, and Cinta is killed, and it feels a lot like Brasso's death to me. Empty and pointless and frustrating. Again, I want to make it clear that I think that's the point. I'm not criticizing the writing. I think it's supposed to feel that way, and it's working well. It ties in with the themes of rebel disorganization at this point, and it also ties in with the idea of Cinta figuring out her priorities too late. What should feel like a success is instead a tragedy, and even if it were a full success, they're still just doing what the Empire wants. The only person leaving that scene smiling is Sirill. I love Vel's speech to Sam in the speeder, telling him Cinta was everything that he has daydreamed about. Like Cassian said, the Gorman front is inexperienced and rushing to catch up to the Empire. Sam brought a blaster when he was told not to, just like Luke brought his lightsaber into the cave, or like Luke brought his lightsaber into his nephew's hut. If you're looking for adventure and excitement and you're itching to wield your blaster or lightsaber or whatever power or weapon you have at your disposal, chances are you're going to. The episode ends with Dr. Gorst, and I thought we were building things up for the next arc. I thought we would get to see Bix take a year or so to plan an assassination, but holy cow, it was great to see her already in the room. And I like Gorst trying to remember how he knows her. That takes us all the way back to Skeen in Season 1. The axe forgets, but the tree remembers, which would suggest Gorst has tortured so many people beyond just Bix and Salmon Pack. Look, Star Wars is not about revenge. We're not supposed to seek it out, but I'm not going to pretend that wasn't satisfying as hell, and hopefully it'll be cathartic for Bix, allowing her to heal and come back to herself. At least she ensures no one else will have to go through that kind of torture ever again. And that brings us to the end of 3 more great episodes. There's plenty to chew on, although I will say a lot of this feels like it's set up for the upcoming Gorman massacre, which isn't bad. That is a huge event that needs some build-up, but that's going to be it from me today. Let me know what you thought of this arc in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on our socials, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.